Rob had told me a bit about the story beforehand, so he'd been talking to me a bit about it. So I was already excited before I got the script, and then once I got the script, I mean, the world that's described by Rob and Sion is very vivid and detailed, and it was exciting. How did I feel about the script? It was a dream job, is how I felt. It felt like, please let this happen. That's how it felt. The research behind the film is we did just a ton. I don't know if I can even do it justice in how much research we did, but you know, we wanted to get the world of Amleth's 10th century Viking world. We wanted to get that world correct, and so. You know, I started off with, you know, as you do with internet searches, and I bought every book you could possibly find on the subject. I subscribed to a scholarly journal. I don't even know what you call it, but they send me, they still do, I think every single day I get something from somebody who's written something on the Vikings. So all of that was great. One of the first things that I did see was Neil Price, who ended up joining our show much later on. But he has a lecture series that I think was for Cornell, that's online, and it was great because he discussed the Vikings not just in terms of the physical finds, you know, what the boat looks like, but who the people are. One of the difficult things that happened on the show was the pandemic. And so what happened was we went down, and when we came back, we went through all different kind of protocols, and there were difficulties involved with it. But one of the benefits was at Fjolnir's farm. These are all turf buildings, and I had seeded them, and I had just started to get them to grow. But with the hiatus, it gave everything time to grow in more and really to settle in. And that's true of all the sets, really, but especially at Fjolnir's farm. I mean, we had a pretty good turf roof on everything, and the side walls were just starting to sprout, but by the time we came back, it had fully grown into the set that I had hoped we would have had. From the very beginning. And so that was spectacular. Hrappensee is really King Arvindale's world. And I mean, not only did I want to bring us back to the 10th century Viking Age and have it separate from the other two looks in the film, but I wanted to make sure it had sort of the power and grandeur of King Arvindale. I mentioned earlier when King Arvindale comes into the longhouse, I wanted that sound of horses' hooves on the stone. You know, most of the world here is wood, and the colors are shades of that. We don't know a lot about the painting. We know a little bit, but not a whole lot. But when you get into his bedroom, I used as inspiration some of the picture stones and some of the leather work that's on the sheaths, because we don't have any paintings that were on walls, even though they're described. They're just not described in detail. And so I painted those in reds, and I painted a story on his wall, and at the back of that wall, there's a box bed, which is Gudrun's bed, and it's womb-like. We have a lot of phallic symbols all through this story. It was really nice to have the opposite. And because she's the powerful person here. Fjolnir's farm, when we get there, the tone shifts dramatically from Hrappensee. The world of Fjolnir and Gudrun has come down a few notches. And you see that not just in the lack of opulence that we see in Fjolnir's farm, but the historical record actually works perfectly with the characters. we see these turf buildings, dirt floors. They're trying to bring back the grandeur. If you'll notice, the columns are carved, but they're very simply carved. The layout is the same, but it's so very different. Amleth is sleeping on the floor with oxen. Once again, it's the dirt and the turf of the land that we're seeing. When we go to the temple, there's a little bit more of Hierophancy there, but it's all sort of a pale shade of what Hierophancy was. When Amleth grows up, next time we see Amleth, we see him at the land of Rus and coming to the Slavic village. And here I wanted everything to be earthier, I mean, of the land more than what we saw at Hierophancy. That was a frozen world. This is a wooded land with the palisades that go all around it. And where I had done stave buildings in Hierophancy, those are vertically built buildings. I did boar-style buildings in the land of Rus, just to help separate. Those two architectural styles would have gone from one culture to the next, but more as a place setting, you know, more as differentiation between the two locations. And it's the place where Amleth comes to as a berserker and is coming to pillage and burn and slave. They're looking for slaves. My relationship with Rob is, well, it's fantastic. What can I say? For me, at least from my point of view. I've had the luxury of this being my third film with him. So I understand how he works, I believe, and what he needs. Rob has a design background, so which is extremely evident in the script when you read it. It's very detailed. As a matter of fact, I mean, when we were doing The Lighthouse, he said, and he said in interviews, you probably have heard, that he started off with the feeling, the atmosphere is what he was thinking of. And then as he started writing the script, and then he found the characters through that. My job is to take the characters that are written and to find the world that they live in. You can imagine how much easier it is with a director who started from there to understand what it is that he wants and needs. And he's extremely easy to talk to and articulate, and he'll tell you what he wants. And he'll tell you when, no, that's not what he wants. No, it's great, I feel very blessed to have met him. Design-wise, Linda and I share our research and our thoughts freely. Constantly trying to understand and figure out what the shots of the director of photography are. Now, with this particular group, it's a little bit easier because Jaron and Linda, and I would add Lou Ford, the editor, we've worked together on all of Rob's films now. And so when I see them on set, I feel like it's a family reunion. It's great, but you start to understand. So for instance, for me, I start to understand how Jaron's going to frame a shot, you know? And so almost intuitively, you start designing for that. The authenticity. So yeah, we're trying to find, you know, to create Amleth's world, you know, Amleth's Viking world with his dysfunctional family. We wanted it to be real, to feel like it was real. So we wanted to get all the details right. We wanted to like I said a second ago, transport you back into the 10th century Viking village. So how do you do that? Well, you know, I tried to get the architecture right and tried to get the materials right, and get the aging of those materials right. But it's not just that. It's the swords and the shields and the armory. It's the jewelry. It's the carvings. There's lots of different carving that we did here, and they're not just Viking carvings. They're, in Harafancy I chose to really do the Oseberg style carving, which is these gripping beasts that seem to repeat and intertwine. It just felt somehow perfect for our story. So it's the ships, it's it's like all the little details. If we can get those right, historically right, we could hopefully transport the audience, once again, back to this time and place. We had a langskip, which is the long warship that you most identify with the rowers and the tall sail. We had one of those built in the Czech Republic, along with a Knorr, which is more of a merchant ship and a heavier seagoing ship that we take our journey from the land of Rus to Iceland in, as our characters by that point are actually, they're goods to be sold. They're slaves. And so we built those two ships, and quite proud of them. They're nice. They're beautiful. And we had a couple of other ships that we actually got from. One of them was from a museum in Southern Ireland, and another one came from Denmark. But they were all from Roskilde, and those smaller ships were actually built by hand with all the original tools. And they were beautiful as well. Working in Northern Ireland has been fantastic. A bit disappointing because of the pandemic. The people have been, what can I say? They're not only incredibly talented, they're just really lovely, and it would have been nice to go out for a drink, and we weren't able to. We did a little bit of that during prep, but prep is the difficult time. But honestly, I don't know if I've ever had a crew where all the departments seem to get along so well. It's because everybody is so professional, talented, good-natured. I couldn't recommend it more. Anybody that wants to come here and film. But I hope that they felt like they were transported back to the Viking Age. And I know it seems to be a repeating theme of mine, but that's truly what I hope that we achieved. Is that they feel that they went for a ride in the Viking Age with Amleth, and I hope they like it.
It's a Viking Hamlet. I mean, for me, I'm already sold. I want to see a Viking Hamlet. I mean, give me a break. It's got the most amazing language and some of the most amazing imagery that I've seen on any production I've ever worked on.
He wanted shots that were dense, as far as, not kind of longer takes with a lot going on in the background, just rich frames that just kind of go on. So that was our goal, and I tried to, see how far we can take it with our limited experience level. Let's just go for it and take risks and see, reach for this thing. We're going to fall on our face a few times, but that's just part of it. And so we're really doing our best to bring that. And I had a lot of, backlog of ideas going back to almost film school of all this technical stuff I wanted to try. And having the opportunity to do that was, hard to express how joyful that was, Yeah, that was kind of the biggest thing. It's like, isn't, for me, invention, like Craig, the production designer, had this research that was like really helpful to him, Rob, what he did, Linda, but really, being so distant as far as the visual arts, I had really nothing to go by. So it was just, that was the difficult thing, to sort of not have that guidance, because even The Witch, we could look at paintings of a certain era, but this, we didn't have that. The reason you have these viewpoints is because Main Street and Rapsy goes up like this. So how do you have these moving shots? You know, I mean, we used, I learned about all kinds of new tools. You know, that was like a camera car with a crane on it, you know, because there's no other way to get this stuff. I mean, we carried, yeah, so that was a challenge there. But, you know, again, with the little V and the map, you know, we like Amleth's escape, you know, really planned to a T. We knew what it was. We knew that we had to take the backside of a house out to get him under the house. And I knew I had to tent it to make it look like it was actually under the house, even though it was open on the back. And, you know, had to, you know, again, puppeteering these hypothetical performers to execute this shot. But the hope is that it's, you know, I mean, maybe it is oppressive, but it's like that, you know, I really enjoy the idea that, like, you know, the camera is sort of, you know, knows everything. Like you know, the camera is leading the action instead of the action leading the camera. You know, like they really are linked together. It was a lot of fun to devise that sequence, you know, and I'm very happy with it, you know, and it was daunting at first to sort of figure out how to do a raid as simply as possible, even though it's like on the face of it very complex, you know. But like, how do you have the camera do something simple with like, but also depict so many layers of things going on? So, but again, having 7 months to figure that out, you know, that's pretty cool. Filmers Farm, visually wonderful. Not so easy to work there. I mean, we got really lucky because it's very windy there. And we shot some tests there just I was working out my moonlight techniques for lighting there, and we were grounded both tests because of wind. So I really was worrying whether we could actually shoot there, but we already built the farm there. So that was a big concern. I think if we actually shot on time, that would have been a real issue. But when we returned in August, I mean, it was just prohibitive. Like stuff was cranes were like the lighting frames were bending. The cranes were, you know, you just couldn't keep them up in the air. It was just so windy. So yeah, that was very concerning. But the fact that we went back in August, suddenly it was very calm and we could shoot there. And that may have saved us. It was just like, you know, reducing things to the essentials, you know, which is kind of how would I put it? It's kind of a deceptive endeavor because you really have to think about it for a long time. Like, how do you pack all this information with all these characters and these abstract ideas of, you know, magic and following a fox the same time he sees his mother for the first time? Like, how do you sort of rearrange all this information into just nice, clean streams of information, you know? In less shots, you could sort of just kind of pick off stuff, but that's just not very, you know, it's kind of like I don't know, like something layered and complex, you know, whether it's food, wine, whatever, is just more satisfying than, you know, just sort of like little simple nibbles, you know. So, and I just wanted to try that. You know, so it doesn't mean that you have to do a scene in one shot. That's just, that can get academic, but something where you're really just, how many things can you fit into one visual idea, you know, and still have it work? As far as like photographically, it was, you know, for me, it was actually pretty neutral. It was more through the camera language that I really got to play. It wasn't, you know, because there wasn't a lot of photographic texture I was putting on it, you know, like my other stuff with Rob, or probably will do again. But so it really was all about what interests me as far as like telling a story in a pure way as possible, you know. So it's not like Rhapsody is going to have a strong blue tone and then you go inside, you know, you'll have Firelight will look red and you know, Overcast will look cool, but there wasn't anything heavy photographically put on it. I really it's all just kind of what is the rhythm, what's the tempo of a scene, what's the what's the feeling? You have to, when you walk through a house, just the simple difference of how you pan, conveys a different feeling. It was like, little stuff like that, even though a shot could have 10 of those things, like, oh, this boom up just feels a certain way, or it just, I don't want to say it's like a dance, but that's kind of it. What's the tone through how the camera moves? In this case, it was the berserker priest with his, with his helmet and, his two staves or spears. And then he moves, and then you show a little bit more, and then you show the entire campfire, and you show, having that shot sort of unfold, and then it sort of sits there at a certain pace. And then when they go into a frenzy, it's then that we start moving around, and it's kind of this low angle coming around the fire. And the more that they intensify, the more that now we're going to go in through the crowd and, pick out Alex and have our shot intensify. So trying to take our cues, our camera cues from what's going on, but at the same time, distilling it, getting rid of, just making sure it's all, simplifying it, hopefully in the best way possible. You're not going to have these people going crazy and these people in a different mode, or, you're going to sort of shape it to try to make it, I guess shoehorn it into whatever the purest version of itself it can be. It's nice having rules sometimes, like, we have firelight, we have overcast, and we have sun. That's it. That's what you get. So having those rules, I kind of like. I mean, this was sort of extreme, like not having even a window to work with, but it's nice to be able to just, I guess, rule out, extraneous things early on. You want to fully use the set that's been built for this raid, which means you tend to see it from one side of the village, and assuming the audience, or, and hoping that the audience is going to assume that you're in the middle of the village, so you're only seeing half of it, but really you're seeing the whole thing. So that helps simplify it. Like if you sort of see the village from kind of one side of what we built, using the maximum depth throughout all the shots. So that sort of we sort of planted action that CC came up with. Excuse me. We planted action that CC came up with around the buildings that were there, that Craig had there, and then we sort of, depending on what cranes were able to do, like, oh, this distance between this building should be a little shorter, and then we'll try, we'll compensate by tracking more in this next shot and whatever. So, so it just felt natural that, I mean, we always assumed it was going to be depicted as 4 shots, like we had 4 big action beats, or main action beats, and other like layers of secondary action beats. But each one of those would have been a shot. We're trying to be realistic. But when you just, when you're trying to work the depth of the set all the time, it's like, well, this just flows from left to right. Like, why do anything else? I mean, we had to have one cut to depict early on when he jumps off the palisade and lands on the horse. But, that's the best way to tell it visually anyway. But other than that, we're just going to depict a single take. And that to me is the simpler solution than trying to shoot multi-camera. And that's just how my brain works. I'm working with Craig to make sure the camera can get to A to B to C to D, fluidly, cutting pieces out, putting them back, Frankensteining sets back together, whatever we had to do. I probably am getting spoiled by him. But the art team are a little fiddling with, just background details of tables and props and, cheating things here or there to make the composition, So, big thing, art department, and then just Dutch pulling off these, and VFX, putting, big time, and finding ways to merge stuff together. I mean, the raid and putting, stitches and things like the thatch of a roof, or, tilting down to someone about to be attacked and then tilting up and having it all blend together and feel like one piece. So it really was a lot of departments coming together, to pull this off. So, all these ridiculous ideas we had, would have been impossible without them. To bring, to sort of make it for grown-ups, and to depict something. Hopefully it's more exciting because it is based in something real and something accurate, and carries the extra weight of not just flights of fancy, but an entire way of living and a way of a belief system, and feeling the anchor and the weight of that.
This is the first world, Harafansi, which is the largest and wealthiest community. We have our queen, played by Nicole Kidman. We have our king, played by Ethan Hawke. His brother, played by Claes Bang. And we have young Prince Amleth, who then becomes our lead, the fantastic Alexander Skarsgård. This community really illustrates high status Viking clothing. It has luxurious costumes. Queen Guthrum and King Orvindil definitely have the most evidence of high status. In Land of the Roos, the Vikings are dressed with a more Eastern influence. So their tunics are linen and not decorated with tablet weaving to the same extent as you would see in Harafansi, which is tunics made of wool and decorated with tablet weaving. There's a huge battle in Land of the Roos. We see our berserkers first in their normal everyday Viking wear when they land, and then we see them that night in fur costumes. They have personas that are either wolf or bear, and Amleth has his own very special version, which is a combination of the two. The idea being that the wolf are personalities that are intelligent and speedy, perhaps a bit more wily, and the bear is the brute force, the strength, and his is a combination of the two, and consequently his costume was twice as heavy as all the other actors. Both of these worlds, Viking and Slav, is very difficult to research because there are not many surviving pieces, and they are literally pieces. There's not one complete garment, and there certainly is not one complete outfit for Viking research. So the Slav research sort of presented itself bit by bit by bit. It was incredible, actually, to be on set. There is so much detail and so much energy spent on trying to, make the costume sets, props, everything as authentic as possible. And then when you add to that the horses, the stunts, the camera work, it was really, like being shot back in time. Fjölnir's character, unlike the king, his brother, does not have the same taste for conspicuous consumption and wealth. He works. He worked as a foreman for his brother when he was at Harafansi, and here he works to benefit his family. He's dressed well. He's dressed in high status colors, which at the period would have been madder root red or blue. Blue created from, all of this is plant dyed material. So that would be created from woad or indigo. And the greens, which are from retsetta and indigo mixed. Really complicated and amazing material textile production. It was one of the commodities that Vikings really valued. It took a very long time to collect the wool, to spin the yarn, to then weave on these vertical looms that were what the Vikings used. We see this in our research because there are so few actual examples. Our research comes from artwork at the period, so things that are images that are engraved in metal or carved in wood or woven into tapestries. And so we tried to we did really keep that in mind with the silhouettes, and it was pretty thrilling actually to research and then get to the work of making all of these costumes, and then come across a reference months later and think, it's another example of the line of that dress, or it's real geek stuff. We have sort of small side scenes that happen, and they are with supernatural characters, magical characters. We have a Valkyrie, we have a sorcerer, and we have a warrior king who is a mound dweller who possesses the magical sword Dragur that Amleth must steal in order to be able to carry out his revenge. So the research and certainly the fabrication for those costumes was really fun and difficult. We also have an area in the film called Place of Visions, and those are characters, 5 performers who were dressed in clothing and armor from periods ranging from 50 AD to 750 AD. And they're meant to be dead, so their distressing and breakdown was an incredible job. Claes Bang, who plays Fjolnir in Harafancy, at the top of the film, Claes actually wears one of my favorite costumes, if not my favorite costume. It is for the assassination scene. He wears a shaggy cloak, which actually was a commodity that Vikings traded. Its value came from the fact that it was made from the long hairs of the Icelandic sheep, the tog, and that was woven into a blanket, additionally to the wool that the face of the blanket was made from. And so this rendered it incredibly warm, obviously really important in that climate, and waterproof. So for a seafaring nation, that was also very valuable. So these Verifeldir were traded as a commodity along with vadmel, along with gold, along with silver, along with slaves. After reading the script for the first time, my initial thoughts were, this is quite large. It has 3 very distinct and different worlds, many characters in different levels of wealth. I thought I better start reading the sagas. One of the challenges with researching the Northman, and I would imagine any Viking project, is the lack of written information. It's still an oral tradition at the period that this movie is set at, early 10th century. And it remains so actually for a few centuries after that. So even the sagas, which are fascinating and have amazing characters, they're probably about 300 years after the period that we were looking at. So that was challenging. Robert is exceptional to work with as a director because he's a writer-director. When he is starting to think about the characters, starting to write the characters, starting to write the script, and through his process of writing, he does his own exhaustive research, and he does that so that he can incorporate a lot of the movement, a lot of the what will end up being the sort of setting of the film into the script. So it's all there and it's embedded in the script. That's very rare. Initial conversations, it's for the first, in all 3 of these collaborations, and particularly with the Northman, because again, its size and the different worlds that we delve into, It feels kind of like I would like to have Elon Musk's neuro brain so that I could just basically plug into Robert and download all of the information that he has already sorted and, figured out for himself. We have very similar geek type proclivities. I started the Northman with an incredible amount of information, and to that I added more research, and then sort of started off down the path of, so how is this made? Why is this made? What does it mean? As pertains to the textiles or the construction techniques, and so. Always taking things back to Robert and saying, this is what I found about that, or this is what I found about this. And, he was always excited by, adding the layers. Both Craig and I are on, Robert's wavelength, and Craig and I speak together and speak with each other. And Robert is, I think, probably the conduit that keeps the information flowing back and forth. So no surprise when it all comes together, it seems like it's of a kind. I think that the Northman, it's thrilling yet again, as it was on The Witch and The Lighthouse, to stand on set to the side and watch the characters in situ and really feel transported. It's thrilling. We all try to absorb information, detail, and then incorporate that into the designs so that the audience for these films really do not have to question what they're seeing. I would be thrilled if the audience for the Northman are transported, if they feel that what they are seeing in the story feels authentic, if it moves them, if it makes them curious. And I guess I hope that it might ignite a curiosity about what is really and truly a Viking aesthetic.
I had to come and see Robert and had my interview with Robert, and straight away I think we got on quite well from there. Initially we were talking about the sword fighting styles of the Vikings, and it's something I studied as well as various other different skills, but and that was what the initial part of it. And obviously then once I've gone through the script and read that, I like the authenticity of it. I just come from other big films as well, which I thoroughly enjoyed, but it was nice to get to something a little bit true and a little bit heavy and gritty, I knocked off the cobwebs of various things for Viking style fighting and stuff like that, because we're all getting used to swinging great big axes and smashing down walls with big, mainly big weapons, but actually the blades weren't quite that heavy, and and the fighting style itself was there's more finesse to it. There's things with the shields, rather than just banging onto the shield as protection, you use them to push the blade away and to deflect it. It's very much like fencing. So that was good. So I went back and went to look over that. I've been throwing lightsabers around for 3 years, so it's nice for me to work again with the heavier steel. We was involved with Robert quite a bit. Normally we do previews of fights and then we show Robert, but we were literally upstairs from him. So he would come up and look at a fight as well and get involved with it as well. So that was one of the most enjoyable parts of it, because then you're not barking up the wrong tree or running down the wrong road. It's the boss is there and he's come to see it. And he made changes as well. I'd quite like this, quite like that. Obviously then we start training with our actors, and you have to work to their ability. On this film, there's only one camera, so to get your cuts in there is very, very difficult. And so that was a process for me to learn as well. There's no cheats, I'm using my actor. For some scenes, we'd spend quite a bit of time prepping the actors ready for the scenes, like for the fight scene. Claes worked very, very hard. He would come in 3-4 times a week for a couple of hours with the guys and work with those. Alex, whenever we could get him, because he was obviously so busy, and unfortunately because of we closed down for a while, we'd already been training, but it was quite a big gap. And then it was a case we was up and running, so we grabbed him when we could. And they tend to, with Alex's, tend to land one on top of the other. So I didn't want to teach him something which is, before we taught him something else, so we can clear his mind and we move on. But he picked up a lot of stuff quite quickly. And you bear in mind that these are the actors and you watch them move, so you try and put the fights to suit them, not to suit your stuntman or some guy who's amazing with it, because it won't be them on the day. So it's their fight. So that was important. But they also went off and did horse riding and various other stuff. And obviously they were training probably 4 or 5 times a week as well, because they're fit guys, you know, they put a lot of muscle mass on. So they've been working. We had a gym here, they had a private gym elsewhere. Part of our sword fighting and our fighting lessons, but it's a big workout as well. So it's not easy on the guys or the ladies. You know, we've had our ladies come in and do fights as well. When you talk about stunt-wise, I talk about fights because they were one of the biggest things we did and the battle we did. But no, I mean, we were rowing boats, we were swimming in the sea. You know, it's not warm out here. And Alex did a great job in the sea. We also had our boat on stage with tip tanks, which are big, 3/4 of a ton of water coming down a chute and smashing into them as well. So let's time that right. Otherwise it sends them across the deck, and we don't really want that. So that was great fun. Special effects did an amazing job on that. They also had pots of mortar pots, which would fire water up as well. Obviously anything to do with animals, horses and dogs. You know, we had dogs attacks on it. We did in the village scene, dogs attacking people. We brought specialist handlers in for the attacks. All the cast have been amazing, and they've all been fabulous to work with. Claes was fantastic. The amount of work he come in and worked and got himself in shape, and I know we've got on with him quite well. Alex is a dream, and that boy can act as well. It's so that's he works very closely with his double. You know, they're bigger boys than me. So I can do a move and actually my double will go, it sort of suits him a little bit better, so they can go away and work with it. So those guys got on well. It was lovely to see Nicole. I worked with Nicole years and years ago, and she's still as good. An amazing actor. She's really turns it on. And it was amazing. I can't really put a finger on it. I didn't really have one bad one, to be quite honest. Swords from the sword masts, from the armory that they would write down. We had an authentic sword which they brought in, and Robert was showing everybody, this is what the real one. It's been dug up. It was a bit of a mess, but you know, it would be over all them years. But and it was nice to be involved with it. And the props, I mean, they're amazing. If something would turn up, everybody would look at it, that would go. If it wasn't right, it wouldn't even go in the background. That's not on the set. So I think it was a big, big part of it. Even the boats, I mean, they built those boats. They're amazing. Yes, so authenticity, I think I got it right that time. I think was bang on the money as far as I'm aware. Working with Robert was an education for me. I really got on well with him. I think I did anyway. We had some fun, some good times, and some head-scratching times together. And I did learn a lot from him, you know, from a side which I don't overlook, but I'm not that interested in so much. You know, might be a bit too hearty for me or two, but I really got into it and really enjoyed it. And he educated me with things like, why is he doing this in the story? And well, that's what everybody would expect him to do. So not everything is expected or corny as what we think. So there was a big mind process in it as well. And he would involve me quite a bit with things which nothing to do with stunts, but it would help me with the flavour for later on. So he was a clever man with that, the governor. No, he was a dream to work with. I'm hoping the audience will watch the film and see the depth of it. It's deep. There's a lot more to it than, especially with the fight. It's not two blokes going bang, 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 bang. We can do that all day long. But there's more to it. You know, try to get those looks of the acting. It's rich. If you look really closely at it, it is rich. I want to see when it is fun, enjoy the fun, because within it, there's some fun characters in it, and the hardship of it all. It's, you know, it was a hard time, especially for the slaves and that. It's just, and look at the way they shoot, the beautiful colours, the richness of it. My big word about the film, I'd say richness, and the script. Stick with it, because it's all in there. So it's just very clever.
Iceland is very unique in its topography and its landscapes itself. You can have beautiful flat green fields and lovely green rolling hills, and then of course you've got the volcanic areas and all of those plateaus, which are completely different geological materials. So what I tend to do, and the best way of doing it, is almost breaking Northern Ireland up into different regions. And so we know that way down in County Down, in South Down, in the Mournes region, we've got our very barren peatland, bogland, rocky landscapes. You then start sort of moving up towards County Antrim, North Down and County Antrim. And that's where you start getting these beautiful big rivers, fertile flat landscapes. And then as you travel further up to the north coast, that's when we've got our very dramatic coastal cliffy landscapes. So that was the best way that I could found of attacking it, really, is breaking it up into those regions and then placing the story countries into those regions. The North Coast penultimately turned into Rapsay, which was in Scotland. Now, of course, Tor Head, you can see Islay and you can see Scotland from Tor Head, where it literally, Northern Ireland has just broken away from the mainland. So very, very similar geological landscapes within them. So, and then the Mourne Mountains became more Icelandic because of its rockiness. It looked more barren and more like the glacial parts of Iceland. And the Ukraine land of Rus, that was the River Ban, Clandyboy Estate, Shane's Castle Estate, all of that sort of North Down and County Antrim. Tor Head itself, the headland, it literally is a peninsula right out in the sea. And that was from a design point of view, from a director's point of view, from the DP's point of view. It was going to give us the best drama and do the best storytelling for us. Knockdo itself, whilst you have, it's probably the most ancient and habitated area in the whole of Northern Ireland, in that since medieval times, since Neolithical times, you've had people living in that area. You've got a fort promontory up on the top of the cliffs there. You have burial mounds much further up the valley. You have a Neolithical grave on the other side. But within those rolling hills where we placed and built our village is actually outlying medieval old structures within there which have been grown over. So there's, whilst again to the naked eye, as you're walking about, you would never really know this, but there have been villages, people living on that landscape for thousands of years, which is really, really wonderful. So I worked very, very closely with the historic division. And the archaeologists came up, we worked hand in hand, and the archaeologists came up once a week. We went through exactly how we were going to protect the area, the areas that we were working in. So it worked very well indeed. So quite accidentally, I think I probably picked the most historically accurate place to put this Viking village. We knew it needed to be the base of the mountain, but and something rocky. And I'd sort of looked around many quarries, and then I remembered there was one which was a black quarry, or very dark brown and black stone, basalt. So I thought, right, well, we'll go up here and have a look here. And thankfully, it worked perfectly. We were shooting it at night. It being a quarry, we were able to sculpt and redesign almost the rock faces within there. So Bog Hill was a gift, really. It really was, because of the black basalt. It worked well. So at which point we sort of brought it down to, okay, we'll take the ice element out of it. And then there's a game called a Nat Liquor, which is sort of a mix between, well, it's Viking, shinty, or hurling, if you like. So it was up to me to find, we needed a 360 environment to shoot in, which was very difficult, which meant we did have to travel very far into the mountain. You couldn't come to a base of the mountain with a nice tarmac car park at the bottom. We had to keep on going, keep on going, keep on going. And we did a lot of looking and a lot of thinking. And then we basically came down to the crux that the Mourne Mountains is the place to be. But it's going to be difficult because we need to be right in the middle of these mountains. And there are only a couple of existing tracks, which were actually the existing old quarry tracks. There's Tracy Track, the track that goes into Hen Mountain, and another track which takes you through to Eagles Rock and Pigeon Hole, which... or up to Hare's Gap at the top. But, none of these were tracks that were, you could get a 4x4 so far, and then that was it. So I was faced with building a 3-mile road to get us into our location. And I think I threw absolutely everything at that location: cast helicopters, equipment helicopters, building a 3-mile road, tractors and trailers from the farmers, quads and trailers, and 4x4s. And it worked brilliantly. I've had a great time with Rob, really great time. And, I'd like to say that I think we're both friends and we're good friends after it. It was a huge, first time I met Rob was when they'd just been scouting in Iceland, and then the whole team came to me and showing them locations here for the first time. So it's always quite a sort of pressurized moment at the beginning, but we got on very well. He loved what he saw. He was obviously very clear in his vision of what he wanted, and he wasn't going to be sold short on anything. And if he felt the location that he might have been offered wasn't quite going the full mile, he would really push you to keep on looking, to keep on working, to keep offering up other options for him. So the majority of the time, he was very, very happy with what he had, with the odd occasion where for instance, the Nat Liquor game, he really, really wanted something very, very special, and by that, it meant it was going to be a very remote location. Essentially, having built these Viking boats, it was then trying to find. I knew the rivers which were going to fit with the locations that we had in Northern Ireland here, and immediately the Ban was the river that had fitted the land of Roos best. And even when Rob and I actually looked at historically the real river that he was referring to in the Ukraine, in Russia, when you then looked at pictures of the Ban, they were exactly the same. So it was great that way. It was really lovely to do a historical piece, and the Vikings is a period that I've never encountered in film before. So it's been really, really interesting. And Robert and Craig are, gosh, they research everything to the absolute nth. And Linda, of course, as well, with her costumes, and everything is absolutely bang on and as it would have been and as it should have been in the Viking time. So it was really fantastic. I really hope that they are just blown away by, and I think it will be visually, it will be so rich, and it will be, to the eyes and to the ears. I think it will be sensational. I just really hope they go away feeling that we've not only told a very, very entertaining story, an emotional story, and it's got them thinking, but also that it's believable that, that was Scotland. Rapsy was Scotland. Thulnia's farm was Iceland. We were at the base of Mount Hekla. We were in Russia, in the Ukraine, and I think visually from my point of view, visually there's enough epicness within the landscapes to really transport them and hopefully transport them back to the Viking Age.
Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and comment on the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to be notified when new videos are released.